Hi everybody, this is Davis from Hardin County Conservation again. It is finally time that I talk about some of the critters that I have here at our nature center. So today, since it is pretty much prime fishing season and we have free fishing weekend coming up June 5th, 6th, 7th, we are going to talk about native Iowa fish today. The first ones I'm going to focus on are the native fish that are not game fish, so ones that you would not often catch. And then the last half of the video I'm going to talk about native game fish. So I have a few species here in some aquariums that I have at the Nature Center, and we will get to talk about all those. But first place I'm going to start you is right here behind me in this monster size 400-gallon aquarium. So hang in there. First one I'm going to start with, why don't we focus in on this guy? The one that's picking at the rocks right there. You guys see how he has like all those little white bumpies on him? Looks unusual, like it might be sick or it might have like ick or something. Actually, that is a perfectly healthy central stone roller, and it's got a couple of its buddies right next to him there. So in the springtime, these central stone rollers develop what we call tubercles, which are essentially like little barnacle looking things on the fish's head. And that lets females and other central stone rollers know that this is a reproductively viable individual. It's ready to reproduce. It can spawn whenever. And they do spawn this time of year, which is why they have those big tubercles on their head. So they are getting ready to lay their eggs. And one unique thing that they do is, actually the reason they get their name, they roll stones to make their nests. And you will see them in many videos making their nest by pushing rocks and large stones around. So the central stone roller, relatively common fish species that is going to be at the bottom of our food chain. They're a very important food source for pike and smallmouth bass and lots of other things. But nonetheless, very distinct. They have that little red dot on the top fin, nice white fin edges. In the springtime they have those tubercles, so very distinct, easily recognizable. This species here is a white sucker. You can tell it's a white sucker because there's almost no coloration on the pectoral fins, pelvic fins, or the dorsal fin. Very teeny tiny scales, and all of their fins are soft, so they don't have any spines or anything. That makes them an important food source for our native game fish, such as smallmouth bass and northern pike. This particular species can also be a host for baby mussels. So baby mussels, when they start their life cycle, actually feed on the blood of fish gills. They are parasitic when they're little, and then when those mussels reach adulthood, they get past their Glaucidia stage, they drop off of the gills of these fish, and they become adult mussels in the water, and they begin to filter feed. So white suckers can be an important host species for those mussels, and without these guys, a couple of our mussel species would not be able to survive at all. We also have black side darters, like this individual here. They get their name because of those black spots on the side, and they are very common in our river, especially behind our nature center. We see lots and lots of them. Again, they're going to be found in the substrate like the majority of our other darters, and these do not develop those vibrant colors like we see in rainbow darters or banded darters. This is going to be their active breeding colors. So if you ever find one of these guys out and about, this is what they look like pretty much all times of the year. So again, that is our black side darter, and they get their name because of those black spots. In this little pocket here, we have another native Iowa darter species. This guy will inhabit most of our interior streams and rivers, and they do thrive in small streams, but they also do well in large rivers, like the Iowa River behind our nature center. This individual is what we call a fantail darter, and when they are in their breeding colors, the males will actually develop a very dark colored head and almost a kind of a dark green body, so they are very pretty, very vibrant. But these feed on a variety of benthic macroinvertebrates, such as caddisfly larvae, stonefly larvae. They'll eat various types of mayflies, but nonetheless, just like our other darter species, they are going to be found on the substrate in the water because they like to be close to the bottom, darting in and out of the rocks. We also have common shiners, horny head chubs, northern hogsuckers with their very gravelly, granity looking stripes on their body and those bright reddish copper colored eyes. And last but certainly not least, our biggest inhabitants of our tank and some of our largest non-game fish. This is a red horse sucker. We have a variety of these in here. We have shorehead red horse, greater red horse, black red horse suckers, so we have all sorts of different kinds. But kind of the trademark characteristics of this guy: large golden colored scales, orangish to red pectoral fins. Sometimes their tail can be bright red depending on the species. But nonetheless, these guys are awesome. Again, important food source for our larger fish in our rivers. But they are also host species for those mussels we had mentioned earlier with the white suckers, so they can be a host species in their own right. And they also feed on those aquatic macroinvertebrates. So these guys can eat stuff that's a little bigger, such as hellgrammites or Dobson fly larvae. They can eat dragonfly nymphs, so baby dragonflies which start their life cycle in the water, and a variety of other things. They'll eat worms, leeches, basically anything that's going to be on the bottom of the river. And you can tell they are bottom feeders because if we look at the mouth, it's going to be kind of tough to see. That mouth is downturned, which tells me that this is an individual that definitely feeds in the substrate. They want to be picking through the gravel looking for any kinds of bugs that are kind of cruising around. They're not going to be up near the surface the majority of the time. So again, this is a red horse sucker, and it is another common non-game species that we get here in Iowa. So the main reason we mention the non-game fish is because they're essentially the baseline for what else can exist in our river. So with our smaller fish species, for instance, if we don't have darters, if we don't have horny head chubs, if we don't have central stone rollers, there's no way that our predatory game fish can survive. So we wouldn't have nearly as many northern pike, or possibly no pike at all. We wouldn't have smallmouth bass, we wouldn't have largemouth bass, we wouldn't have a variety of types of panfish such as black crappie or white crappie. So although we often overlook those smaller fish species, they're in fact our most important species, and that's what we want you to be able to take away from this video. So as much as we like to catch those really big ones, the little teeny tiny ones are the ones that make the biggest difference for our ecosystem. So I'm in our reptile room now. I'm going to move us on to our predatory fish, and you will see those in the couple of tanks behind me here. So we'll start with largemouth bass. So here's one of our major predators in the Iowa River, especially if you get below the dam in Iowa Falls. This is a largemouth bass. We can tell it's a largemouth and not a smallmouth. One, because of the size of the mouth in general, the position of the jawline compared to the eye, so the jawline comes farther back than the eye. The green coloration rather than the brown coloration tells me that this is definitely a largemouth bass, and in the size in general too. So largemouth bass are one of our main predators in the river. They're pretty interesting. With that huge mouth, they can eat anything from baby mice to baby ducks to varieties of different kinds of fish. They'll eat night crawlers, other game fish. So they eat a pretty wide variety of things. Crawdads as well. And that is what makes them such a great predator in our rivers. So without those little teeny tiny things, this guy here would not exist. And this fish actually came out of our river as a baby. So he has been with us for a number of years now and is doing quite well. But again, this is our largemouth bass. Typically we do not find them in moving water systems like the Iowa River. They like those slow moving systems, more like ponds or lakes versus big river systems, but in certain places they can thrive very well in large river ecosystems. So they do well in our river here, and that's primarily because we have a good supply of food. So lots of minnows, lots of crawdads, lots of aquatic macroinvertebrates and things for this guy to eat. So again, largemouth bass. So this individual is a little trickier to see. This is our smallmouth bass. Very distinct markings, more of a brownish coloration. Jawline does not go past the eyeball, so that tells me that is a smallmouth. Lots of stripes on him, spots on the top, coppery color, stripes in the face, yellow tinted fins. So for sure this is a smallmouth bass, not a largemouth bass. These guys are a little pickier with their diet. They'll eat things like frogs if they have the opportunity, but typically they're going to be focused on aquatic macroinvertebrates at this size, or they will pick at different types of bait fish. One of their favorite foods is actually crayfish, so a big aquatic macroinvertebrate once they hit a larger size. But they'll also eat things like suckers or other game fish, mayflies, stoneflies, all sorts of things. So smallmouth bass are pretty generalist. They are pretty much a river exclusive fish here in the state of Iowa, though we do have them in a few places, especially in the Iowa Great Lakes region. But they definitely do better in fast-moving river ecosystems. So this is just a baby smallmouth bass here that can get significantly larger. But again, a very unique, cool predator nonetheless. The last individual we are going to talk about is one that gets overlooked a little bit in our river, and this is the yellow perch. Again, yellow perch are predatory, though they serve as a food source for a lot of our other predatory fish. If you look at this guy, that greenish coloration, the black barring, and then the orange tipped fins are kind of the distinct features of this individual. So easy to tell it's a perch, very unique markings. We have a couple of them in here. But they have a relatively big mouth for a fish their size. They can eat large minnows, they can eat suckers when they get big enough, but their main focus of their diet is actually aquatic macroinvertebrates. So they feed a lot on scuds or freshwater shrimp or freshwater isopods, stonefly larvae, caddisfly larvae, things like that. And these, although they do well in the river, again, just like the largemouth bass, they're going to be more of a still water system fish. So we do see them in the river in places, especially if you're down towards Pine Lake, where they actually come out of the lake from time to time to reproduce. But generally, you will see them in slow-moving systems, so they're not equipped like their cousin the walleye to be able to survive in really fast-moving systems. They like that slower water, where bugs and things are far more abundant. So again, this is the yellow perch, and this is another common predatory fish that we have here in the state of Iowa and in the Iowa River in particular. So this is another one of our Iowa River predatory fish. This is an old taxidermy mount I found at our nature center here. This is of a walleye, and the reason they get their name walleye is because of that distinct eye. This one is a little exaggerated. Normally it's not quite that cloudy. Generally they have kind of a blackish colored eye with a little bit of cloudiness in the center, and the reason for that is because they are primarily nocturnal. So this fish is going to forage at night the majority of the time, and one of the distinct features outside the eye to help me identify this critter here, one, it's got a very spiny dorsal fin. If we look at the tail, there is a white tip on the tail, and generally the pelvic fins there will have the white tips as well. But the other thing is, if we look in that mouth, lots and lots of teeth. So walleyes are a very toothy critter. They feed primarily on bait fish. They'll eat leeches, but those are really going to be kind of their main two focal forage items. They'll also eat crawdads and other things that live on the bottom of the substrate. These tend to be a bottom-dwelling fish for the most part, and that simply has to do with their eyesight, because during the daytime they still want to be able to see to forage, so they need to be closer to the bottom where light can't penetrate as much. But outside of that, they are almost fully nocturnal, though they can be caught during the daytime, especially if you're fishing in relatively deep water. So they have that nice, pretty gold color here in Iowa, and they are quite a beautiful fish. So again, this is the walleye. And the final fish that inhabits our river here, I do not have a live one of these. One, because they eat a lot of stuff. Two, I do not have the tank space These are very hyper-aggressive predators, but this guy here is a northern pike. Easy to tell, they have that distinct barring that goes horizontal along their body there. Generally they have that kind of reddish colored tail fin and a couple of adipose fins there, but kind of their main feature there, look at the teeth. So they can have over 700 teeth in that mouth, and that is built for one thing, and that is catching other big fish and other things that are cruising along the water. So they'll even eat small beavers, baby muskrats, even adult ducks when they get large enough. So these are the absolute apex predator of our river as far as fish go. And a very aggressive fish nonetheless. Big eyes for their head, they have phenomenal eyesight. So they do require clear water to be able to feed very well. But again, hard to keep these guys in a tank because they eat absolutely everything. So this is a pretty large individual. This one's a little over 40 inches long. Our fish can get that big, but it is very, very, very uncommon that they get that size. Ours tend to be significantly smaller. This is actually a Canada caught fish. This is not one that was caught out of any of the rivers in Iowa. So nonetheless, a very cool predatory fish. And again, I'll show you the teeth just so you can see all those choppers in there. So again, that is our northern pike. And that is going to do it for our video today. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions for us or you have any comments about our video, you can leave a comment in the comment section below, or you can follow us on social media for updates with our fish or other wildlife related things at, if you go to our Facebook, Hardin County Conservation or Calkins Nature Area. You can also go to hardincountyconservation.com and stay updated with some of the stuff we have going on out at Calkins Nature Area. So thank you guys again for watching, and we hope you learned some cool stuff today.